There we go.
Hey, hello, my friend Jen. Hey, Coach Jen, all the way north of me in Canada. I am Coach LeAnne, and I am zooming in with each one of you from Colorado. I am on the road, and so I am in Colorado right now. And Coach Jen and I would love to know that we are alive and well, heard and seen on Facebook and on YouTube. So, friends, we thank you so much for being here on Leslie's public page. We want to remind you that we are here in a very public space, and we are here to talk about embracing balance and boundaries and what even might that mean. So that's our topic. And then how do we do that, Jen, with a biblical approach? How do we do that? So once again, I am Coach LeAnne Parsons, and right here, the other direction,
Yeah.
this lovely lady.
High five. See if we can do that.
I don't even know. No,
Give me the other way. Yeah.
I don't even. Oh my goodness. Hi, everybody. Hi, Janice. Hi, Amy.
Hi,
Oh, hello,
Candace. Hi,
mommy.
everyone. Yeah. No, we are so glad to have you here. We know it's a different time of day, right? Than we normally do these lives. Some of you might just be getting ready for supper. Some of you are just kind of settling into your afternoon. And who knows, some of you could be half asleep right now, all the way across the world. So we're so grateful that you're here. And I'm grateful for my colleague, Coach LeAnne, that we can have this conversation open and honest as we always do. In terms of today's topic being boundaries with balance, basically. So I want to give a shout out to our support, Karen. So thank you, Karen, for loving on the group and loving on us as we keep going through this next hour. And I think Karen will probably be able to take your questions if you're not feeling safe to do so in the comments. And we understand that because this is a public space. Karen can take your questions through a specific link that she'll put up later. And that way you can ask LeAnne and I anything that pertains to boundaries and having the balance that it takes. So yeah, welcome. I see so many people. Belgium. Wow.
I know
That's
Belgium is in the house.
awesome.
It is. What time and day are you in
Yeah.
Belgium? And this, my friends, is a very important topic with you all. You are here oftentimes when we talk about boundaries. This is it's a big word, isn't it, Jen? It's a big word for a lot of people. It can tend to be overused and can tend to be a buzzword. And the funny thing is many of us don't even understand what boundaries are.
Yep.
And even if they're biblical. And so let's start, my friends. Let's start this. Let's start by understanding what boundaries are, what they are, maybe, and what they are not. So I would love to hear from our gal from Illinois, New Jersey, Belgium. We're all over the place, right? Michigan, all of you. Hi, Chicago. Welcome. We would love to hear from each one of you. When you hear the word boundaries, how would you define a boundary? How would you define the word boundaries? If we're going to talk about embracing balance and boundaries, what are boundaries? We can't embrace something that we're not clear on what it is, right, Jen?
Yeah. Well said. Because I'm just like, well, how can we balance something we don't even know we're juggling yet? And I want to give a shout out to anybody that is just tuning in and maybe doesn't even understand the word boundaries. I know for me, I knew the word in terms of the dictionary. I'm not stupid when it comes to certain words and definitions. I get it, but I didn't know what it meant to have them. And I think that's the big difference here. I knew the definition of the word. I didn't know what it meant to have them, let alone balancing boundaries with life and certain relationships and all the categories we have, right? So please understand, we know if you're just new to this whole concept, so am I, so was I. Like, it's not easy. We often have to go through something hard to recognize we need boundaries. So we hear you and we see you and we feel you.
Indeed, Jen. I love that. I love that you said that because sometimes we know the dictionary definition, but we don't know how to put them into practice. We don't know how to embrace them. and what that could even look like. And so I'm seeing some things some definitions in the chat, what I will do, what I won't do.
Yep.
Boundaries are what I will do, what I won't do. You go limits to what others can say or do or use. I see boundaries like a line in the sand. This is what I will do, and this is what I won't allow in my life. Well, hi, Sherelle. Good to see you. I love that. We have our friends in our
Yes, we
world
do.
here. And we're so grateful for our folks that join us so faithfully, and we appreciate your trust and confidence. What I'm willing to do and not do for myself.
Yeah.
Protecting what is important to me, staying out of danger. Boundaries provide safety, who and what we let in, and what we keep out.
Oh,
Hi,
yeah.
Kelly. Good to see you too. All right, so here we go. I'm going to just throw one out, Jen, and then I would love to hear yours. All right, so boundaries can be like fences we put around our hearts and our lives. Okay, that's one. They help us to define our limits. They help me to protect my core well-being, my friends. Okay, so I'm going to say that. And they really help me to maintain healthier relationships. All of the relationships that I have in my life, I wouldn't classify as super healthy, but boundaries help me to have healthier relationships. And they're on the healthier road rather than on a more destructive road. All right, Jen, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah.
What would you add about definition or in embracing boundaries?
Yeah, I can't love that enough about the fence that we have. So when you picture, and I'll just build on that, when you picture a fence around your yard, it's because you're trying to protect it. So I look at that as my heart. So boundaries are not to be controlling. They're not to enforce punishment or consequences on someone else. That might be a byproduct, might be an unintended consequence, but that's not your goal. Your goal is you recognize someone else doesn't have your best interests at heart. I have to do this for myself. I'm going to protect my own yard with my fence. And guess what? I don't know about you, but I've downsized, but I used to have a house with a fence and I had a gate. And sometimes I had it locked because I didn't want intruders coming in and jumping into my pool at 2 o'clock in the morning. Or I would leave it unlocked because I knew I had guests coming in and out to share our time together. So there was permission there. It can be flexible. So I had protection. It wasn't hard-hearted. It was flexible. So I knew, and I used discernment to decide who could get into that fence and who couldn't.
Jen, that is so beautiful. And it shows so much personal responsibility, what you just shared. You know, and I know for some of you have puppies out there. Some of you are dog lovers. I think we just had National Dog Day this past week. All right. So we used to live on 2.5 acres, Jen, and we did not have a fence all the way around our property. How would my dogs have known what they could do and what they couldn't do if we would not have given them boundaries? And so we bought them a collar. They didn't have to wear it more than about 3 weeks. And then they knew how far they could go and no farther. Or they would get a little zap or a noise, an alarm would go off, and it would scare them enough for them to know. So boundaries also are some warning lights for us that when we are being depleted or going someplace that maybe that is not safe for us or that hasn't been totally thought through, a boundary is going to help keep us safe. It's going to help keep us safe.
Yeah.
And so, okay, yeah, I'm loving, Amanda, if boundaries are meant to protect the relationship and not to keep people out of your life, how do you deal with others who think and treat you like you are mentally ill? Okay, I did not expect to dive so deep into such a beautiful question so quick. That's what I love about our community.
Yeah.
Here we are in this space talking about real hard things right away. So Jen, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I still think boundaries are, necessary, intact, and so are values. So I'm encroaching a little bit onto our conversation, like as we balance the balance thing. So we're going to talk about how boundaries can help fortify your heart, but what do we do to balance that with situations like this? So if someone still, is it true? Maybe you are mentally ill. Maybe you need to have boundaries on yourself. because boundaries aren't just for other people, they're on our own hearts as well. Okay, so it's how we want to show up. You often hear us talk about our big circle, and for those that aren't familiar with that concept, in short, it's basically, how do I want to show up in a godly way? What's God, what strength has God already given me, and what is he calling me to be? Okay, so we want to protect that and show up in the best way, but we also want to balance it with our values. So if someone is name calling, is that something acceptable for you? Because if you're not mentally ill and it's just a way for them to shoot daggers at you verbally, then you step up with your boundaries and say, that's not okay. I know you're upset with me, but that is not okay to call me names or to label me or to say that I'm mentally ill. Not okay. Now, if there is something wrong, we strongly encourage you to seek the help that you need from a professional. And maybe it is something discerning that you need to consider. I don't know what your particular situation is, but boundaries are meant to protect you with your values intact and your big circle self the way that God has called you to be. So if you know that's wrong, speak up. If you think there's something to it, pray, ask for wise counsel, because that's part of what we're here to talk about tonight is our upcoming program, Walking in Core Strength. And the O part, so we do CORE, and if I can jump right to the O, is open to wise counsel in the Holy Spirit. That's right. So maybe we need to talk to somebody else if they see something in us that we can't see. And we do a deep dive in that program into our blind spots, the courage that it takes to ask others, what do you see? Am I mentally ill? Am I acting in a way that's not becoming? Whatever the case may be. So I'll pass it back over to you, LeAnne, for different thoughts.
No, I think that's great. And, we get to take an opportunity, and that's the R Step of Core in our coaching program. So maybe you're just listening and you're curious, what is this group coaching all about? Please go. We invite you to go to leslievernick.com/group coaching. And on that site, you're going to see a video from Leslie that is going to explain a lot about the program and some bullet points to help answer your questions about the ins and outs of that program. But I will say, your well-being, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, is really important to God. Super important. And so there is no shame in saying, you know what? I need a little bit of help here. And so, if that's the case, some of you are here right now because you're not thinking clearly. You have all those ruminating thoughts. I know for me, I have to really watch that for myself. All right. And so we want to empower you to make the best decision that you can. And so you get to know what's going to be okay with you. Perhaps the person that is calling your mental well-being into question is not a safe person for you. Maybe they are a safe person for you. You're going to know that. And you get to decide who you're going to receive feedback from. And then what you're going to do with the feedback that you receive. All right. So I just really want to share that some of us here in this space are involved in healthy relationships. Some are not. Mm-hmm. And knowing what to do in the midst of both is why Jen and I are here and so passionate to have these conversations with you. And so I have a question, another question that I would love for us to talk about here for a moment. If I were to ask you, my friends, we don't want this to just be a what I will do, what I won't do conversation about boundaries. We want to give you something to chew on, don't we, Jen?
Oh, yeah, always.
All right. All right. So if you are ready to play with us here a little bit, I want to ask you, what types of boundaries do you think they are? If they are limits, if they're fences around our hearts, our minds, our bodies, right, our spaces, what kind of boundaries might you be aware of? All right, so I'm going to put one out. I'm going to put one out there. Like I talked about my pup, okay? My puppy, he wasn't a puppy, he's a German Shepherd, but he was a big boy. Max's boundary was a physical boundary. He couldn't go physically outside of our property, okay? That was a physical boundary. What other types of boundaries are there?
Yeah.
So that was a physical boundary. What other boundaries can you all think of? Jen, when I talked about physical, so the physical involves personal space.
Yeah.
It involves touch. All right. So maybe it's how are you a hugger or are you not a hugger? Do you
Right.
shake hands? Do you not shake hands? Those are boundaries. Okay. Are you an elbow bumper, right? A fist bumper, whatever. So we can communicate that to other people so they don't get closer than we want them to be. All right. Without permission.
So
So
we've
it's
got
really
time, emotional seems
Here
to
we go.
be, yeah, seems to be big. But you make such a good point. There's so many ways that we can have boundaries. And I think there's ways that we can communicate them too, verbal, nonverbal, right? I mean, I think people will recognize, or we've been the receiver of body language. Say, like you said, if we go in to hug somebody and they're like rock solid, cold, something, it's like, okay, not a hugger. Oops, I did something wrong, right? So that's okay. It doesn't mean that we were rejected. It doesn't mean anything. When we're on the receiving end, it means that person's strong enough to go, that's not okay with me. And we're healthy enough to go, okay, I'm okay with that. Thank you for telling me. I know those aren't the words we actually might say out loud, but we can feel them in our heart. And likewise, when we put it back out there, so say we're the non-hugger and someone comes at us and we don't even know yet, but we kind of freeze, and well, we're communicating something. In other cases, like LeAnne just demonstrated, maybe we'll like kind of put our hand out to shake instead of hugging. Or we'll do, like with COVID times, we'll do the elbow bump, or maybe that's just what you continue to do because that's what's cool with you. But you're giving a message, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, about what's okay with you.
Right.
And
Jen,
that's, that's a physical way, but we're hearing like emotional, I would say financial too. What are
I
our
would.
boundaries? You might have a child that kicks and screams because they don't get everything they want every time they go to the grocery store or to the mall. What are your boundaries about that? What are you going to say or do?
Right. Jen, that's so good. And, let's take for just a moment because several people typed in emotional. And
Yeah.
I would love, so my friends, when you think about these emotional boundaries, we talked about the physical, and then Jen just gave this beautiful example about financial boundary. How much will you spend? How much won't you spend when you go some places? But this emotional piece, this is pertaining to your feelings and your inner experiences, what's happening inside of you. So I just want to say that. And so, do you know that you can have an emotional boundary that you're not going to allow other people to manipulate your emotions, or you're going to have a boundary around the fact that you want to express your feelings in honest ways, that emotionally you're not going to be a pretender. Can I just say that? So this is an emotional boundary. This is something no one else can decide for me. This is what I get to do, is I'm going to communicate my feelings and my emotions honestly. And guess what else? I'm going to know who is safe to share with and who is not. Those are also emotional boundaries. Jen, what else would you add to that?
Oh,
Anything?
you just struck me hard with that whole idea of no one knows but us. So don't look to be for the other person to be a mind reader, please. They can't read your mind. They
No.
don't know. It is up to you and only you to communicate what that is, verbally, non-verbally, emotionally, spiritually, anything, financially, physically, to communicate what that is, because it is up to you. No one is going to save you from yourself. I'm sorry. They're just not. Boundaries are for us. And I'm holding my heart. I do this just naturally because it does. It affects my heart. I'm not feeling my heart racing. It's just a place I always put my hand to feel the connection to my outside world, to my heart. So you might want to do that right now, is just put your hand to your heart and just feel it and just own it and know that you and only you are responsible. So we talk about what I will and won't do. What are you responsible for? What are you not responsible for? Is another way to look at boundaries, right?
Mm.
And the other person is not responsible for reading your mind. So if you're upset about something or that's not going to fly with you and they don't comply, but you didn't speak up, that's not on them. That's on you. So
Right.
I say this to promote your sense of self and agency and speaking up.
Indeed. And, just as they're not responsible to be a mind reader, you can't read theirs either. We can
No.
make so many assumptions and we can make up so many stories in our minds. And so another boundary is I'm going to get the facts. And so this is a mental boundary, my friends. This is
Yeah.
a mental boundary. You're going to focus on your thoughts, your opinions, your intellectual spaces, your mental real estate is your responsibility. And so how much access you give people into this headspace is you. It's on you. And so I just really love you all enough to, we love to talk about the hard, real stuff.
Mhm.
And, we're not going to have all the answers. We're not the end all, beat all end all for this. But one thing that I know for sure is we believe that you have it within you to live the life that God created you to live. And you can do it with boundaries, in balance with scripture, in very godly ways. And the more aware we are of the types of boundaries we can have, the easier it's going to be to set them on ourselves. And so just like you're not others aren't responsible for your mental real estate, you're not theirs. They
Yeah.
are also not responsible for your emotional regulation. You are responsible for your emotional regulation and your boundaries. And guess what? That means you don't have to be responsible for theirs. You can give it to them. That takes a huge load off our shoulders, doesn't it?
Yeah. They're meant to be a beautiful thing.
They
It's not meant to be punishment on ourselves. It's not meant to be punishment on somebody else. It's this is what I'm going to do because this is what's important to me. Whatever happens, happens. So if they don't like it, now that could be a bit of a red flag about the unhealthy healthy person that you're engaging with, because most healthy people will understand, oh, she's not a hugger, or I can't spend that much money, or I can't talk to her that way. She's told me. But if someone keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, I know that you have to strengthen those boundaries even further, get some support in keeping that up. But the whole idea is that they're for you, not for the other person. And if they push back, it's more on them than it says anything about you.
Right. And healthy people live in truth.
Oh,
Healthy
yeah.
people live in truth. And so we're not pretending. And so, the C, we have this walking and core strength group coaching program coming up here.
You
Oh,
know, how it
and
shows up. It
I
goes
know,
like
right?
this, but yeah, CNC.
And so the C part of core strength is committing to the truth, no more pretending. And part of that is doing your own personal work to know what is true for you, what is okay with you, what's not. The O step is being open to the Holy Spirit and to wise others. It's both. Okay. We can't do this life alone. We weren't created to do this life alone. We have the Holy Spirit and we have other wise people in my life. I'm so grateful for colleagues as Jen, so she can help me see what I cannot see. I have blind spots. She helps me peel away those layers. I wouldn't be the woman I am today if I didn't have wise others in my life. That's the old step. And so what we do in this coaching program is we help you cultivate and nourish each one of these steps. The R step is being responsible for yourself, respecting others without dishonoring yourself in the process. They are so intertwined and beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the E is being compassionate and empathic. Do we have any ASL people out here? I love American Sign Language, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the E step, is being compassionate and empathic without allowing the betrayal, the abuse, the addictions to continue.
Yeah.
My friends, this is super inspiring. And we cultivate this in healthy ways so you can have the balance. So, here's the deal. We talked about a lot of different types of boundaries. I want to say we have time boundaries, Jen.
Yeah.
We have time boundaries, right? How much time are you going to continue to struggle with your own core well-being? We get to decide.
Yeah.
That's a boundary too. I'm
Yeah.
going to, sometimes I just get angry. Jen, do you ever get angry? Like,
No. No.
oh,
Of course I do. I think it might have happened just a couple hours ago about something that boiled me up. But yeah, absolutely. So what do I want to do about that? How do I want to show up within that anger? Because anger is a God-given emotion. I always say it's what we do with the anger that gets us into trouble.
Amen. And we
Right?
get to decide how long what are we going to do with the anger? And then how long will we be there?
Yeah.
How long? Because we have to get it out. We are not stuffers around here. That's not core strength, right? If we were stuffing, we wouldn't be committing to the truth or
Yeah.
taking responsibility for ourselves, because stuffing makes you sick. Stuffing makes you sick. And so, oh my goodness, but a time boundary would be, how am I going to manage my time here? It's not just time blocking on your agenda.
No.
Sometimes I walk women through this, Jen. It's like, okay, so you are really angry, you're really frustrated, and you want to have this conversation with somebody. When do you want to have that by? And what do you want? How do you want to prepare for that? How long do you want to stay in this space? And so it gives you options and choices. So boundaries give us choices, my friends. Without boundaries, we don't have choices. We don't have choices.
I love that, because without them and without that concept, like I was saying earlier, I knew the Webster's dictionary version of the word, but I didn't know how to live it. It wasn't until I lived it that I could actually carve out time to think about it and decide with that choice how I wanted to show up. So I love that. It's so powerful. So if you've ever heard from someone that you're controlling or you're being manipulative or how dare you say that to me or this is punishment, that's because they don't like what you're saying to them. So you get to decide, going back to the time, you get to decide how long you're going to spend in that emotion, what boundary you're going to put on, and then how much you're going to put up with the pushback. It's a whole other level of boundaries. Right? So there's choices to be made. And I love that you highlighted that, because that is really key. That's what this is all about, is showing up in our best response versus reaction. Right? So if you use the anger example you just gave, that can often be a reaction. So we notice something's happening and boom, train's out of the station. We are like flying whatever out of our mouths or throwing things or whatever we've done, stomping our feet, you name it. But with boundaries, we can recognize, whoa, they're pushing my buttons. I don't like that. Not cool with me. Now, what am I going to do with this? So we pause, decide what we're going to do with it, and then we show up as our best selves, whatever that may be. So we help teach you that with all of the CORE steps combined. You'll find that it's not siloed. It's not one and the other and the other. It all comes together. Trust me. Yeah.
It's all woven. It's all woven together. And that's why we love this 3-month group coaching program, for that reason. You know, we meet every other week for 3 months, 90 minutes on Zoom, face-to-face, 15 other women in your group with the same coach for the entire 3 months. We get to know each other, and we really help walk each other through these steps, as well as we practice together about what does all this look like to really live it out, not just to have this mental awareness of it, but to embody what it means before the Lord to live this out. And it's so powerful. And so, you know, I want to throw out something else here. So I'm going to ask another question of our community here, because we have a whole big, beautiful bunch of gals here tonight. And so I would love to ask you this question. How many of you are minimalists when it comes to your wardrobe? Just curious. Just curious. Do we have any minimalists in their wardrobe? I am not. I am just going to confess, I am not a minimalist. I'm not. I like variety. Okay. So this is where I want to, this is another boundary. There's a reason why I'm asking you this, because I want you to see another boundary. And that's a material boundary. It's material boundaries.
Yes.
These can relate to your possessions and your belongings.
Yeah.
All right. So I am not a girl who's going to say I only wear black and white. Okay. I don't have that boundary. Now, it would be a lot easier if I were to go shopping, if I only had that, but that's just not me. I would love to get more simple with my wardrobe, but I kind of like some variety, and I like thrifting. Just saying. Okay. And I like thrifting. All right. I see there are some folks who are minimalists.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you have lots, but you tend to wear the same things. Okay. That's showing you something. I love that. I'm working on it for years, working on it. All right. So our material, this helps us to relate to our boundary or to our possessions and our belongings. And this is where balance comes in. So this whole topic, my friends, of balance and belongings, when we start to see that there are opportunities all around us, safer spaces to learn to practice boundaries before we take them to the most challenging relationships that we have. My relationship with my closet is challenging enough, but it's not as relationship it's not as challenging as some of the other relationships I could walk into. Jen, how about you? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh no, I love that you bring it like right down to some basic stuff that we have to look around. So look at your relationships at school. For those that have school age children, it might be a stranger in the hall, but what are your boundaries if someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, you should join the PTA," or "Have you donated some baked goods to something?" And then all of a sudden that pressure comes in, and whatever might happen to you in those moments, and that's a boundary, right? It's talking about the time, it's talking about maybe the minimalist stuff. Maybe you don't have those kind of, if you don't bake, maybe you don't have a drawer full or a cupboard full of flour and sugar and all the things that go with it, right? So, that's where you can politely say, "No, thank you," in some way, shape, or form. But I love that. Like, I mean, it's a test to us as to where in our lives are we successful with upholding boundaries, and then maybe where do we need to secure them a little bit more. I have no doubt you all know and have experienced having boundaries before. Our challenge to you really is to go back and reflect and look at when you were successful with that. And remember, success is not based on whether the other person accepts it or not. Success is dependent on whether you spoke up or used nonverbal body language, something to communicate that message that this is not okay. That's your success. Okay. So that's all you need to focus on is, how did I show up? How did I communicate? Did I communicate? Whatever is, that's not okay with me. So it could
Oh,
be that you distance yourself from something. It could be you speak up and say, "Don't talk to me that way." It could be you shut down a bank account somewhere so they can't access it. I don't know. But the whole idea is that your success is the fact that you took action, not being dependent on how they receive it or what they do. So please remember that.
Jen, so good. I'm so glad you highlighted that. It's so important. That's how we get to judge it, right? Or be curious about it. Did it deplete us, or did I maintain my dignity card? One of two things are going to happen. You're going to get deformed or depleted or diminished, or you're going to walk in strength and dignity. And perhaps you are here because walking in strength and dignity is the woman that you are being called up to be. And if so, then that social boundary, Jen just talked about a social boundary, is huge. These are, what interactions are you comfortable with? What invitations will you take? What will you accept? What will you decline? And these are, ladies, I hope that this is helpful for you to see that it's more than, "You can't talk to me that way." That's not what we're talking about here. And boundaries are everywhere. They're everywhere. And learning to uphold those in very beautiful ways is an opportunity for all of us.
Yeah.
And there's another one too, digital boundaries. How much time are you going to spend on social media?
Yep.
Right? How many of you would love to have more digital boundaries for your teenagers?
Yeah. And it's not just the time, it's the content. It's like
Yeah.
those keyboard warriors, I think they call them. Are you going to be sharp with somebody online, but you wouldn't have done that face to face? I mean, maybe there's a call into question there. Like, again, I go back to that big circle idea. How would God, if Jesus was sitting right there beside you as you were typing that out, would you still say the same thing if he was looking over your shoulder? So again, self boundaries, how do I want to show up in this world, also teaches other people how to treat you. Right. So it's a beautiful thing. I love the digital aspect. Wow. There's so many facets to this.
There is. And this is something, that sometimes we don't always talk about, and we get to go deeper with you. That's the beautiful thing that we get to do here on Leslie's page. So a huge thank you to Leslie and our support team for the opportunity to come before you and talk about what could be even possible. And so, when you think about all of these different types of situations in which we could have balance with our boundaries, I'm curious, Which one of these resonate with you? If you were to think, my friends, here in this space, an area where you would like to practice a scripting or something with a boundary, which area bubbles up to you? Is it digital, social, material, time, mental, emotional, physical? Maybe it's relationship boundary. Maybe it's certain expectations and dynamics within your relationship that you will and will not do.
Oh,
So
let's
I
call it out.
will,
LeAnne. You and I are not shy about talking about sexual boundaries either.
we are
So
not.
if that's something you need to talk about, that's something that is very much in the realm of this as well. So we understand that very,
It,
very.
it is. And, we're just touching the iceberg. We could keep, the list of the different types of conversations we could have, and the boundaries here is huge. And so within relational boundaries, what behaviors are going to be acceptable for you or not? And that can be in the sexual realm, it can be in the communication realm. And so one relationship boundary that I have that, Jen, it's interesting that I'm talking about this because this is something that is continuing to grow and flourish as I get stronger as a woman before the Lord. So some of you have been around a while. I've been on Leslie's team for a few years now, and you've heard me share that I have purposed in my relationships, whether it would be with my husband or my kids or my grandkids, or even a girlfriend hanging out with, that typically after 8 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I am not going to have emotionally charged conversations.
I love that about you. Yep.
So, because I don't sleep well, I've learned that. Something I've added to that, Jen, is that I will not have a conversation, whether I've planned for it or not. Oh, I love it. We both have a beverage without
my Canada Dry
that I can hold. I've got my water here without something that I can drink. Okay, I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why I do that. Because sometimes I don't think before I speak. Sometimes my emotions can get ahead of truth. Okay, I'm just saying. So if I have something to drink, it is my cue to not say something until I do what? This. And then Jen can fill in because I can't. What can't I do?
You can't talk, and you have to listen and do active listening is what we're talking about, not just waiting for yourself to speak. LeAnne's trying to do that pause thing that I talked about earlier, right? We notice something's happening and kind of stirring up in us, and normally we'd react and kind of whatever happens. But LeAnne just took a big pause there and stopped herself, self boundary, from maybe speaking before she had a chance to really think about it or feel it truly with what God had to say about that.
Yeah. And those are real practical, tangible things that you can do, my friends. So it's a boundary on my time and my emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also a physical boundary. I'm going to make sure. Oh, that another one? I have another one. Jen, I want to hear some of what you do too. But these are strategies, right? Yeah. So another one is if I'm going to be talking with someone and they're standing up, I'm going to stand up.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I am going to match them. I mean, if they're 6'5", I'm only 5'3". Okay, I'm not, even if I'm sitting
taller than me.
So, but here's the deal. I am not going to let someone power over me by their physical presence. So that's something else I'm not going to do. If they're sitting, I'm going to sit. If they're standing, I'm going to stand. If possible. I mean, this is also within, I'm realistic, but whenever, if it's within my control, my friends, these are things that I'm going to do. And this is not trying, these aren't on anybody else. This is things that I will do. I'm not expecting anybody else to do it. No. This is what I will do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I love your sense of pause. And sometimes too, when we're just learning this stuff or we're trying something new, it can be really challenging. So I encourage you to find a sister, a friend, like a sister in Christ, a friend, one of us. Join this program. You automatically get 14 other sisters that are going to love on you like crazy. So there's accountability there, non-judgmental support. not only from your coach, but from all of those other women that will look at you and honestly say, I get it, without any other explanation. Because when I mentioned, like, this was a new concept for me, so I didn't quite know how to figure it out. Okay, so understand, you don't have to have this all figured out. And my head would be buzzing and full of confusion, which I know is the work of the enemy. But I learned enough to go, okay, that's the enemy. I still don't know what the next right thing is to do. So my pause in those moments would be to ask my husband to sleep somewhere else. Powerful request. Okay. I know I can't control whether or not he chooses to sleep somewhere else. So hear me first. Powerful request. If he were to have said no, then I had to really challenge myself. Why am I asking for that? Well, I needed physical space. I needed emotional, spiritual space, but I also needed the physical space that to me represented the clarity that I needed to get spiritually and emotionally. So if he wasn't going to leave the bedroom, then I guess I better. So you can always ask, okay? But if they say no, be prepared to take matters into your own hands. And I say that with love, and to LeAnne's point, where we can't control somebody else. So it's a powerful request that you might make, but you are not powerless. If they say no, you just have to be prepared to do something about it. So that was one of my boundaries, was to, fine, I'll sleep on the couch. You know what? I just need to zone out. I'm going to watch something stupid on TV right now. And then I'm going to pray later, or I'm going to dive into my Bible or do journal, call a friend, do anything I needed to do. But I needed that separate space, because the old me would have just cowered to not necessarily needing the physical touch, but I thought that was just what I was supposed to do to make things better. And I wasn't saying, I'm not even talking sexual. Like, it was just, I just thought that's what you do. Right. And so I broke away from that. And that took a lot of courage and gave me clarity to kind of have that separation, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And so I needed that physical separation, just like LeAnne took that drink of water to kind of just take a few moments to 8 hours, I don't know, to just kind of get my head on straight and my heart straight, and to talk to the Lord about what it is that I need to do. So it depends on where you are in this situation. You might choose to forbear. So for those that just went through our moving beyond people pleasing, you're going to understand that there's times that that's just not a hill you're going to die on. That's the balance.
That's the balance.
Yeah. We get to decide where we have peace in knowing, okay, I see what they're doing. Yeah, I'm not happy about it, but I'm okay. I can still show up as my best self. Yeah. If it starts to chip away, let alone totally rip you apart, that you are not your best self, boundary.
Right. It's time for that. And, there are ways that I often, and I know you all have probably heard this because it's been a buzz for a while, but to know what it is that you want to say, give yourself some time and space to know what it is that you think and believe about certain things. And, here's my catch-all phrase: say what you mean and mean what you say, but don't say it mean. Yeah. Boundaries don't have to be said in cruel ways that you sound like a bully. And this is, Jen, don't you think this is where some of that confusion can happen? It can even come from inside of us because we're so frustrated and we just don't think before we speak, right? Or we're told by somebody, well, you just need to tell that jerk to blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about here.
Go back to your values and go back to your big circle. So what do I value? I value authenticity, transparency, honesty, integrity, compassion, empathy, any of those things, and many, many more. Fruit of the Spirit is your go-to, right? Galatians 5:23, do it. Just, that's your big circle starter pack, if you will. And there's lots of other scripture out there to let you know how God wants you to show up. And you can use those characteristics and those traits and those gifts to still communicate that that's not okay. Remember, no is a complete sentence. And you also don't have to say anything at all. If someone is bullying you, abusive in any way, verbal, physical, or otherwise, you can just leave. You don't have to explain yourself away. You don't have to say, well, now that you're talking to me like that, I'm going to, no, just leave. They'll figure it out. They're not stupid.
And this is where knowing in advance what you will do, and this is part of getting to know you and what depletes you and what feeds you, what
Yeah.
energizes you and what zaps you. And so, we were talking about huggers, are there huggers or whatever? And so, we could say things. Now, I am a hugger. I'm just going to say, you will probably have to tell me not to hug you, or I will ask your permission if it's my first time meeting you, but I am a hugger. And I don't just do like the quick little, I'm an embracer. Some people are not, and I respect that. I have friends who are not. And I appreciate their friendship. I appreciate their friendship. And you know what? If they said to me, Jen, if they said to me, you know what? I love our friendship, LeAnne, but I've got personal space issues and I want to maintain that. Can we just give each other that really warm smile that we love about each other? And that'll be enough. I'm
Yeah.
like, great. I love to smile at
Yeah.
you. It's free. Yes, I respect that. It's beautiful. And thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
All right. And so, and emotionally, right?
Yes.
So here's the
Boundaries are loving.
boundaries are loving. And that's where, Matthew 22:39 says, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, then respect them. If they don't want to hug, then don't hug them.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to talk after
Personal.
no, it's not personal. No, then just do it. And so this is where we get to practice biblical relationship living, right? And so then, okay, so what about an emotional boundary? What about an emotional boundary? It could be, you know what? I value our relationship, but I need some time to process my own feelings here before I discuss this any further.
Yeah.
I just don't have it right now. And this goes into, when Jen and I were talking about your heart, above all else, Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it.
Yeah.
Everything. And so that would be an example of a script for an emotional boundary. I value you. Please give me some time. Actually, not please, you're asking for permission. You're an adult. All you need to say, sorry, is I want some time to process my feelings before we talk about this any further. Yeah. Anything else, Jen, that you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, not anything in particular other than, I mean, you're bang on. There is everything in the Bible that we need in terms of how to show up, how to find that healthy balance. And I know that we are of this world. And so sometimes our emotions are going to get the best of us. So it's a matter of learning from that. We're not asking you here today to start just like that and have all the perfect boundaries. No. Please hear our hearts that we are asking you to just start thinking about them, depending on where you are. Start thinking about them. Well, what will I do? What won't I do? What do I stand for? What don't I stand for? What do I have the right to? What don't I have the right to? What do I want, need, love? All of those things, write them down. Start there, or at least think about them. Others, some of you may be well on their way and they just need to tighten up the script that they use with certain people. Or you may have pushed yourself to the limit and it's not time to escalate that boundary to the next level, where it might be the end of a particular relationship as you know it. And so there's courage in every step that we take here. And LeAnne and I will never pretend to know exactly where you are or what your story is. We just know that you're here showing up because this is important to you in some way, shape, or form. And so we, as well as 14 other beautiful women, will do our best to help you grow and develop your core strengths so that you can and will exude those precious boundaries and everything that's important to you. That's what we're here for.
Indeed. And, our group coaching program that we have coming up here that starts the second week of September is all about that. And we do have morning, evening, and afternoon groups. So we want to encourage you. Maybe this is your next step. Maybe one of your boundaries is, you know what? Thank you for the invitation, LeAnne and Jen. I'm going to make room in my calendar. I know that this is important to me.
Yeah.
And so therefore, now is my time, and I'm going to go click that link. That could be your next best step. That you've heard the invitation. We have a warm invitation extended to you. Maybe that's you. This is a time boundary for you. And you're looking at Ecclesiastes 3:1 that says, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. And you're like, this is my time for core strength. I am kind of done. I'm kind of done pretending. I'm kind of done living in isolation and feeling really lonely and not having any other women to talk to and to grow with. I'm kind of done blaming everybody else for what's going on in my headspace. I'm kind of done going nuclear with my reactions to the people in my life. I want to do life a little bit different.
Maybe if we want different, we have to be different, right?
And do different things. Because if we always do what we've always done, we're going to always be in the same place that we are right now. And so this is your opportunity. So maybe this might be your time to embrace a coaching opportunity. Maybe you've been really curious. This is a very inexpensive way to get professional coaching with a group of Christian women just like you who want to know more. What does it mean to walk in core strength? What does it mean to sit up a little taller, to have my voice, to reclaim my identity, to live my values, my values? What might that even mean? What might it even mean? The whole material boundaries thing. What might it even mean to know what I will lend and what I won't to a neighbor? I will give you 5 pounds of sugar, but I am not going to let you take my favorite sculpture to a family picnic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or that old phrase, I'll never lend a book that I don't care to ever have back.
Yes. And so, this is where, my friends, you've got it. I'm looking at the chat. You are amazing.
Yeah.
And so knowing what you're for and what you will do is so powerful. And so, there was something else, Jen, something else bubbled up for me. And then let's go to some questions.
Yeah, we've got 3 questions at least here. So if you have any others, we'll try to answer them before the top of the hour for sure.
Beautiful. How are we on time? My watch, it totally went out.
7 minutes.
7 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. Time flies when we're having fun. Time flies when we're having fun. All right. So, can I just give a little funny thing, and then we're going to answer some questions.
Always.
So I was playing around with this whole idea of balance and boundaries, and then I got onto this bee theme and how beautiful they really are, that they are not broken. You are not broken because you need boundaries. Boundaries help keep you in balance. All right. And then I started to think about bowling and bumpers. And I look at boundaries like the bumpers on a bowling lane.
Yep.
They keep the ball on track so we don't go in the gutter. And so boundaries keep us out of the gutter, my friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Spiritually, emotionally, sexually, however you want to do it. Boundaries keep us there. And then I started thinking about, okay, so what would be a funny acronym for bumpers? So for those of you who are wordies like me and you like them, I'm just going to say them super quick. Would that be fun?
Go for it.
All right. So balance is your B. Balance is your B. Know what's important to you. Talk about areas like work and family relationships, and encourage others to do the same. Don't let your relationships be one-sided where you're doing more work than anybody else. Balance. Okay? So that's one. You uncover your priorities. Know your core values, like we've been talking about here.
Yep.
Take some time for some self-reflection. The M is make your boundaries. Make your boundaries. Okay? This is part of bumpers. They're the healthy framework for those you interact with. What would be different if you had that mindset that boundaries are a healthy frame for me to be my best with you? Game changer, right? All right. And then practice self-care.
Yeah.
Develop, like Jen said, if you need a good night's sleep and your husband snores, then sometimes you might need to do that.
Yeah.
earplugs, a separate room, whatever, if you're depleted, and then express yourself, my friends. Be able to communicate, be assertive, not aggressive. Teach your children, teach your children how to express themselves, and do not stop them from feeling. Do not stop them from expressing their emotions. Teach them to do it with dignity and strength. All right. And the R, review and adjust as necessary. And then S, get your support system. Join a
Yeah.
coaching group. That's bumpers. All right. There you go.
Awesome.
I just
Awesome.
had to
No,
throw
I
that out.
love that. I love acronyms. I thrive on them. So that's wonderful. Thank you, Coach LeAnne, for that amazing way to kind of summarize everything that we talked about today. And thanks, Karen, for she captured all of that to put it in the chat. That's awesome. Okay, let's quickly go to some questions because we've got about 4 minutes left. Okay, so I had no boundaries at all when I got married. Now my husband, is angrily pushing back on my new emotional. Oh, coaches, it seems like the writer didn't finish the question. Thanks, Karen. Okay, so I'm guessing now my husband is angry about pushing back. So we also have another question. So let's double up here. Difference between pushback and their punishment. So maybe let's talk about, shifting gears. We didn't have boundaries. We now do. And now we're getting the pushback. So what do you have to say about that? Because I can answer that as well.
No, you start.
Okay. Well, to me, it's a backhanded compliment. That's what I tell my clients all the time. It means it's working, and it's not because we're trying to work it. Okay. It just means that they recognize you are showing up differently and they don't like it. And it's not your intention to upset them. Okay. But when they push back like that, it's because they're trying to manipulate you, pressure you, even unintentionally, subconsciously. They're like freaking out because all of a sudden the dance steps have changed. And they want to put you back in your place because that's where they're comfortable. They're not used to the discomfort that you're putting them in now with your healthy boundaries. So it takes a lot of courage, not only to speak up in the first place, but then to uphold that boundary, because they will try every trick in the book to get you to back down and go to the way things were, the way they used to be. So it's not considered punishment. You can say things like, I'm sorry you see it that way, or I guess I see things differently, or just don't say anything at all. Let the actions speak for themselves. Like I said earlier, they're not dumb. They're not stupid. They know what got them into that situation, but they're not going to let you know that. They're going to just push back in hopes that you back down. And that's where the support system, LeAnne's S of the bumpers, is where you need it most, because that's when you're going to be like, maybe I am a bad Christian wife, or maybe, I feel so badly, and now I feel guilty. Get in touch with all those other sisters that are going to lift you up and support you in accountability and loving your husband that way, that when he's pushing back, it's just because he's scared and he's uncomfortable. It's not because you haven't been uncomfortable already. So that's what I have to say. Backhanded compliment.
Yeah, no, Jen, that's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. Okay. And then last question we have, my husband blames our children for his angry emotions. How do I explain to my children that it was not them that made daddy angry? Yeah, that's it. When we get kids involved, it makes it tough, right? Because we're trying to teach them all the ways that they need to thrive as an adult while protecting them at the same time. So I'm guessing in that situation that he's probably not a safe person to talk to. I think in healthy relationships, you could sit down in private with your husband and have conversations, whether it's based in scripture or, just your heart, to say, this is not okay with me. Please, let's talk about this before we talk to the children. Or if you're angry, maybe let him take his anger out elsewhere in a healthy way. But I understand for the most of our audience, that's not the case. And we have to do what it takes to protect our children. We always say that safety comes first, your physical safety, and then obviously emotional is right up there. And if you need to get the children out of harm's way, as long as you're not also putting yourself in harm's way, we want you to do whatever it takes to keep you safe. As far as boundaries go, speak up. Teach your kids boundaries. Teach them that that's not okay. If they're being accosted and verbally, emotionally, or otherwise, teach them. Lead by example. Talk to them at a different time and say, you know what? It's not okay when someone speaks to you like that. Or, talk to me about how you were feeling. What would you have liked to have said? Just embrace them and talk to them about that and let them share their feelings, because it'll grow organically if you let them. But you can have those guardrails in place of your own, and then your children within those to help bounce around a little bit at those bumpers. Sorry, I call them guardrails. You call them, but to have those bumpers so that you can still hit the strike zone, right? You're still going to get there. We're going to bounce around a little bit. So add to that, LeAnne.
Well, indeed, Jen, I love that. And when we're talking about kids, that brings a whole new layer into the picture when it comes to that. And if somebody is outside of the safety zone, emotionally, physically, mentally, and they are bullying and they are yelling, that's a time to take a time out for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really okay to say, you know what, mommy and daddy need a little break here. We need a little time out. And so we're going to continue this conversation after just like we talked about earlier, the emotional boundary. And you can invite your spouse into that conversation. And it might sound something like, wow, honey, you know what? I saw that when you got home from work, you were pretty stressed out. I could tell that you were already at, if you look at a thermometer, you were already at 99.9. And when little Johnny came up and said XYZ, I saw you shoot to 102. And that made me feel very uncomfortable. And Johnny was uncomfortable too. I saw fear in his eyes when you yelled. Is that the man you want to be when you come home from work?
Yeah.
And then ask him, yeah, you know what? Wife, it is, because I'm frustrated, and let him say it. If that's who he wants to be, yes, I want to be the Lord of my house, and he better sit down and listen. And I don't want to hear any yelling. Well, that's going to give you great information. Or I don't want any of that. Or he might say, I didn't even know that I was coming across like that. Thank you.
Yep.
That you said something. And no, that's not the man I want to be. And then if it happens again, my friends, you can say, hey, hubby, I know you don't want to be the man who yells at his children 10 minutes after you walk in the door. I see that you're escalating right now. I got the kids. Go take a break.
Yeah.
That's a boundary on you, sweet mother, woman of God. If you can't be in a house where there is all that kind of strife and yelling, that's a way for you to exercise that boundary. Give somebody else an opportunity for a timeout. Not to enable their bad behavior. I'm not saying that. You heard what I said. I know that's not the man you want to be. Talk to his big circle. Talk to his core strength.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a minute to get yourself together here so we can have a good evening as a family. Take a break. I got this. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You just really painted a picture of what can actually happen in anybody's home at any given time, and how to set that boundary and to take the R step we talked about. Taking responsibility for ourselves, and in this case for our children, while not enabling someone else. All right. So that's the key. So I love that. I love that. We're out of time. We're over time. So let's hold a boundary to our time. Let's
do it.
be that example. So thank you all for joining us. Coach Elise and I are back tomorrow at noon to talk about what the difference is between controlling someone and having good boundaries. So for those that had that question or have been accused of, you're controlling me, when you do try to assert yourself, we're going to go deeper into that conversation tomorrow, because this is, obviously you can tell this is very important to us, and we want you to find your voices in an assertive way, not an aggressive way, an assertive way where you speak up and have agency over yourself and those that you care about. So any last closing thoughts, Coach LeAnne, before we go?
Oh, you know what? I love that you and Elise are going to be talking about this tomorrow. And then I'm going to be live again on Wednesday. And we're going to go deeper again. And this is going to be Wednesday afternoon, 12 p.m. Eastern, I think. And we're going to talk about centering yourself around God and not your man.
Ah, Well, there's
What?
another boundary right there. Where do I
There's
start and
another.
stop with my relationship between my husband and the Lord? Oh, I can't wait. I'm tuning into that one.
So grateful to be here with you. We have such a heart for each one of you. We would warmly again love to invite you to our group coaching experience that begins in September. Go to leslievernick.com/group coaching to find out more about walking in core strength. We would love to have you. Big shout out to our support staff. Thank you so
Thanks,
much, Karen, for
Karen.
being here. Thank you, Donna and LeAnne and Christina and T and Johnny and Laureen. We love you all so much. We appreciate your trust and confidence, and we look forward to seeing you Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday right here. Right
Yes.
here.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'll talk to you soon, ladies. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
good care. Thanks, Jan.